For the first time in at least 15 years, Greece is in with a realistic chance of winning the Eurovision Song Contest. It's the middle of February, and this is already the most hype we've had around a Greek entry for a long time. All of this is thanks to a song that is silly and whimsical on the surface, but as is so often the case, has a lot more layers than you might think. Today, we're going to talk about that, as well as the Greek national selection in general. From the good to the bad to the AI-generated and tuneless. Quickly, before we begin, by the end of this video, we might be planning flights for May 2027 to Greece. And while we're there, we can browse the internet like we do at home using today's sponsor Surfshark VPN. Seriously though, I've been traveling a lot this Eurovision season. I'm in Estonia right now, and I've already been to Moldova as well. And it's been really helpful to know that I can watch the same series on Netflix or wherever else as I've been doing at home, as well as access series that are available elsewhere but not in the UK. I've literally had Surfshark both on my phone and my laptop enabled the entire time I've been here, so I can watch the Winter Olympics using the subscriptions that I already have back home. With Surfshark, you can quickly switch between 4,500 servers in 140 locations, so you've always got a fast and responsive connection available, and they're high speed so you don't need to worry about buffering either. If you're in the US, for example, you can use Surfshark to watch Eurovision on YouTube rather than it being locked behind a paywall on Peacock. You can also watch any region-locked national finals by choosing the appropriate country. Surfshark also has the added benefit of letting you browse the internet without being legally required to hand over your ID documents to random companies. It'll protect your online activity from their prying eyes as well as everyone else's. With data companies and corporations gathering as much data as they possibly can about us, Surfshark can give you peace of mind by blocking ads and trackers, as well as keeping your web activity anonymous. I can't recommend Surfshark enough, and with a 30-day money-back guarantee, there is no risk if you decide it's not for you. Go to surfshark.com/ESCGabe or use code ESCGabe at checkout for 4 extra months of Surfshark VPN. Now let's get on with it, and the 4 frontrunners in this selection politely organised themselves into exactly the order I would have wanted to talk about them, from 4th to 1st in the final results. For that reason, we'll start with 4th place and we'll work our way up to the winner. When we do get there, there's plenty to talk about. We're starting though with last year's runner-up, and that is Evangelia, with her song Parea.
Live fast, but my hips move slow. Don't stop, give me tempo.
Evangelia received some criticism for her entry last year. While it was a strong effort, it was perceived, in my opinion fairly, that it was too generic, didn't really have any edge, and didn't feel identifiably Greek. In those respects, this year was definitely an improvement, at least in some ways. For starters, it doesn't just sound like a generic football anthem. You'd hope as well that something good would have come out of this, given that this song has about 174 songwriters, meaning it's essentially a song produced by committee. In my opinion, it bears both the good and bad results of that process. Let's start with the good. Evangelia has a gorgeous voice, in her lower register especially. Her tone is just so captivating. This song rightly focuses in on that, and it's produced well enough that it shines through the mix very well. Unlike Vale from last year, it feels a lot more identifiably Greek. I also really liked Evangelia's rapping in a way I maybe didn't expect to. That said, there is a fair amount here that really just isn't for me. The song basically rewinds all the way back to 0 for every single pre-chorus, and that is my number 1 dislike. It stops entirely, starts again, but then doesn't lead anywhere, because there isn't really that much to separate the choruses from the verses. I have a slightly cynical theory about this. To be honest, from the start of the pre-chorus build-up, it feels like this was a song designed to have a 20-second segment cut out of it and used on TikTok and Instagram. That's not necessarily a bad thing for a song when it's just existing in isolation. People create and consume media in that way for a reason, after all. But this competition is not dealing in 20-second segments. We're absorbing 3 minutes as a whole live. And in the context of that, these things become frustrating. I don't know if I'm overreacting about this. It might just be that this is something that irritates me in particular. But the consequences for songs like this are always the same. They become disjointed, less coherent, and more contrived. It makes them feel less authentic, and it makes me feel more cynical about them. The lyrics aren't exactly great either, but at the same time, I'm not exactly expecting a socio-political manifesto in a pop song like this. Not everything has to be deep. It is a credit to Evangelia that I didn't feel these problems as much live as I did with the studio version, and that pretty much comes down to just how good a performer she is. It's really easy to tell when a consummate professional is on stage, because she really does have an aura of being totally unfazed by the cameras and the crowds. As a result, she seems relaxed and in control in this environment. She is leading the song rather than being dragged along by it. As a result, she does manage to sell this. It's solid and it's enjoyable. It's just maybe not quite for me. Overall though, while it's an improvement, those problems from last year are still there. Where Vale had an asterisk over its lack of identity, Parea feels like it has one over its construction and its ultimate purpose. If this lands well on TikTok and Instagram, then fair enough, job done. But it wouldn't have been a wise choice for Eurovision, even if a final qualification would have been probable. There were better choices in this selection that the Greeks were right to prefer. One such better choice was Maro, with her song Hanami. This was one of my most preferred songs in the selection right from my first listen to the audio, and I'm glad to see that it got its flowers with a top 3 finish. Fourth with the public was a bit of a shame though. My long-standing appreciation for artists like Ann Marlin in Estonia meant that women-led synth pop was always likely to be a hit with me. So if you've been watching me for a while, you might understand why this has gone down so well. If it's your first time watching, then you probably haven't subscribed yet, so maybe you want to do that now. If not, give me 15 more minutes to convince you. This song kind of feels like a cyberpunkish nostalgia trip, and it's packed full of 2000s and 2010s references to signpost this very clearly. That said, if famousbirthdays.com is to be believed, Maro was born in 2001, which is pushing it in terms of the VHS, cassettes, and polyphonic ringtones that this song references. Also mentioned is Y2K, which was before she was born. Most of the audience won't know this, so it doesn't really matter if the references aren't congruent with her personal experience if she sells them well enough. Luckily, as somebody with an admittedly extremely vague memory of the early 2000s, I think she does a good job of this. Talking about memories on an old cassette, for example, is something that speaks to me, because I remember my parents having an old box with mixtapes they'd made themselves of their favourite songs. We still had an old cassette player that I vaguely remember from the early 2000s, and I consider those tapes that my parents made to be one of the, I guess, 4 main influences on my music taste at that time. The other 3, if you're interested, are, well, Eurovision, obviously, the Nightwish CD that my brother borrowed from one of his friends when I was 11, and then the video game Guitar Hero 3. Taking the nostalgia for the 2000s, which feels like an increasingly common emotion at the moment, and pairing it with the nostalgia for a past relationship actually fits quite well in my opinion. The song feels thematically consistent. The way it's presented on stage works well too, at least for me. When I first saw Maro's stage outfit, when paired with this song, the first thought that came to mind was actually a little niche. But bear with me. I immediately thought of the 2008 video game Mirror's Edge, and suddenly all the pieces clicked together. I recognize that this is a very specific reference that, terrifyingly, came from a game that many of you weren't born to see its release. For some context, Mirror's Edge is a free-running game set in an authoritarian near-future world where citizens' security is guaranteed in theory, but the price is an oppressive, all-seeing regime that controls every facet of public life. Sound familiar? In that game, you play the role of Faith, a young woman operating as part of a group of runners who illegally move sensitive information around the city to undermine that authoritarian system. Coincidentally, in that game, Faith is the exact age as Maro is in this performance. While their style isn't exactly the same, I'm feeling a lot of the same vibes from this song as I get from that game. You could have put this song on the soundtrack and it would have fit well. That soundtrack is available on YouTube, so maybe have a listen to it later and see if you know what I mean. So, what we have is a song that wants to invoke nostalgia in the listener, that did the job for me so well, it made me specifically think of a video game from 2008 that I haven't played in about 15 years. That sounds to me like a pretty clear measure of success. Overall, this was my second favourite song in the selection, and it's probably going on my playlist. So thank you, Maro, for delivering something that took me back to an extremely specific place and time in my life. I appreciate it. Let's move on to the second place in this selection now that was still a long way behind the winner. That was Good Job Nicky with his song Dark Side of the Moon.
Look at the moon tonight, I see it in your eyes.
The studio version of this song is pretty good. It's a solid electro-pop song, it's nicely produced, and I'm sure it'll get plenty of airplay on Greek radio in the coming months. That said, the story of this song in a Eurovision context is going to be defined by its live performance. During the verses, nothing much seems to be wrong. His voice is strong and stable in the lower registers, and that initially made me think everything was going to be fine. Then the chorus hits, and he goes into falsetto. That's where things go badly wrong. Of all the things you could channel, why would you channel Mama Gamma? This performance was not a good job from Nicky on any level. I really don't know why we ended up in this position, because surely there would have been so many possible moments to say, hold on, this falsetto doesn't sound good live. He doesn't even get close to hitting it. And you'd think that somebody would have had the good sense to identify this before it was sent to Eurovision. Did he hit it in the studio? Who knows? Because for stylistic reasons, this part of the song is heavily processed in that version. Naturally, when live, this is not something that can be done. As a result, this went from a studio version that ended up growing on me quite a lot to a live performance that had me watching through the gaps between my fingers. It was really not good. I will put a little asterisk on this, in that Nicky did remove one of his in-ears quite early in the performance. But given it was bad in both the semi-final and the final, the fact that there may have been in-ear issues can't account for the entire picture. This song also came with a little bit of controversy attached to it, because Nicky is the latest in a now 3-generation dynasty of musicians and singers in his family. His dad and granddad are both notable musicians in Greece. This led to suspicions ahead of the show that national jurors may be inclined to vote for him for non-musical reasons, as well as a little resentment that a lot of the opportunities that he's had will have come from his family name and not necessarily on merit alone. While it certainly will have given him a lot of opportunities in his career, this song did deserve a place in this selection, and it would have been a reasonable second place finisher if it weren't for the fact that the live vocals were so bad. In any case, it's time to move on and talk about the main subject of this video. I'm going to throw in a quick couple of, well, dishonorable mentions. Firstly, to one of my pre-show favorites, purely on the basis of it sounding like a FIFA 12 song, that was the Astrolabe. Unfortunately, we were then confronted with this live vocal. Secondly, to Europa by Steffi, which got very high scores from every AI detection tool that I ran the lyrics through. Now let's not beat around the bush any further, because it's time to talk about Achilles, who won this selection by a mile with his song Ferto. Greeks always root hard and root publicly for their Eurovision entry. That said, I cannot remember a Greek frenzy this intense in my entire time following the contest. And we are still in February. This is kind of a difficult song to analyze in some ways, because on first glance, it is just fun, brilliant chaos. Beneath that, there is a deeper meaning. But first, let's appreciate it for some of its surface level qualities. It's fun, and it's silly, and it's catchy as all hell, and it's one of, if not the most danceable entry in the contest so far this year. It's packed full of personality and whimsy, as well as wild creative choices and left turns that might have looked mad on paper, but work so well in the final product. This song randomly throws in a chiptune pre-chorus on the second time around. It's genius, and I love it. Achilles takes to the stage dressed extravagantly, in his trademark hat with ears and sunglasses, bright orange furry boots, a giant heart-shaped necklace, also orange, and shorts and a jacket, both covered in spots that are, well, orange. There will be many people who would just enjoy this on the surface for what it is, or rather what it appears to be, which is a mad, funny man banger, channeling in some way the DNA of Parea, Joost and others. Though I do think there are serious stylistic differences that make a comparison between those not entirely accurate. What they do share is a similar kind of viral mad appeal, but it is stylistically and thematically distinct. What it shares with Europapa in particular, though, is a deeper message that ambushes you when you least expect it. We need to look deeper into this. Amid the sugar rush high of this song, a message starts to emerge. Achilles is almost frenzy as he exclaims about wanting it all, mentioning crowns and thrones, diamonds, money, designer clothes, and so on. The post-chorus sums it up best of all. A step is not enough. I want to be the top. Nothing is enough for me. I want it all. Even everything is not enough. I want so much that it's not tangible. I want glory, eternity, and money. Bespoke clothes that are too expensive. For them to shout my name too loudly. And to dance as I climb even higher. This whole song depicts a character who longs for nothing more than to bask in the wasteful hedonism of effectively infinite wealth. Who idolizes those who are able to live their lives in this way. And who is singularly focused on doing whatever it takes to join them. His confidence in his ability to do this is absolute, at least at first glance. And yet, no matter what he does achieve, he will never be satisfied. It's rather fitting that we had an AI-generated slop song in this selection which lazily and cynically channeled Greek mythology. Because whether Achilles meant to or not, he showed how to actually do this well and to do so in a modern context. Let me lay out my theory for a second. Achilles is Icarus. This whole song becomes headier and headier in its ambition, always reaching higher and higher before all of a sudden, all the boisterous confidence melts away as reality sets in once again. The stage fades to black, and all of a sudden the song is a ballad promising his mother that he will deliver everything that they were deprived of in the past. He promises to buy her houses, cars, and summer homes, and that all of this buying will, quote, fill the gaps. The futility of these promises and these goals is one of the core messages of the song. It represents the reality that for not just the great many, but the vast majority of people, this kind of thing will always remain desperately beyond reach, no matter what they do, and living in pursuit of that material wealth will ultimately bring emptiness. Achilles might promise these things, but soon enough, reality comes crashing back down on his head. And no matter how many of these goals are achieved, he will look up again and find himself unsatisfied, pushing higher and higher until the foundations of sand beneath him are washed away and collapse. Then, with his wings ablaze, he's falling back to earth. This touches on something wider about our society at large. We live in a world that has become defined by and dominated by this pursuit of riches, to the point that it's venerated like it's some kind of holy grail or an indicator of virtue. And more than ever, our society offers us sugar rush options to provide the illusion of this wealth for even a brief moment. Credit cards, endless gambling, payday loans, buying everything from cars to takeaways on finance. The list goes on. It's a constant treadmill that once you step onto it, you can't get off. You can only fall deeper into this financial trap, with the consequences not truly hitting until it's far too late. By then, you've flown so high that the consequences can destroy you completely. I think the reason this has resonated with Greeks isn't just because it's a great song, which it is. It's because I think many people, including me, feel a little seen by this. Ultimately, we want to make the people around us happy. We want to live comfortably. The rat race that we engage in order to try and do just that has only become more deadly, more unforgiving, and more unequal than at any time in modern history. If that message can hit home with the wider European public in May, then the sky is the limit. Let's not forget that Europapa being in Dutch didn't stop that message from coming across. There's no reason why the same thing can't happen here. The great irony, of course, is that by winning this show and potentially by winning Eurovision, that very same system may well award Achilles with the kind of fame and fortune that he's been singing about all along. What Greece has here is a special and deeply unusual Eurovision entry. It's performed by someone who has the charisma and the ability to deliver it live. And it can win Eurovision, because it does have both public and jury appeal. The first half of that is hopefully fairly obvious, but the second maybe warrants an explanation, so I'm going to try and give you that. On the jury side, two key factors play in Achilles' favour. Firstly, the juries have been reformed this year. They now must include at least 2 members who are under the age of 25. That is a key demographic for this song, and it will probably reward songs like this with a very current kind of feel, but a potential mismatch to the current jury criteria in the contest. Secondly, Achilles does to an extent play into those criteria anyway. That slow bridge that we've mentioned also showcases the fact that he has a really excellent voice, and it works well live too. That gives him the opportunity to tick off this box at Eurovision. When we're looking for a potential Eurovision winner, the first question is, can this get more than 520 points? That's an absolute baseline, really. 2025, having a winner with 436 was a major statistical aberration, so we can disregard that. The last decade with the new system had winners ranging from 498 points at the low end to an extraordinary 758 at the highest, all with more points available than this year since we have 35 countries participating rather than 37 or higher. Even with 35 countries, this could hit the heights of 320 to 340 in the public. 180 in the jury would be a distinct possibility as well, given the past performance of Cha 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 and Espresso Macchiato, both of which had less appeal on that side than this does. Take those together and we are potentially at that 520 plus mark. And then we might well all be heading to Athens next year. To make that happen, we need better staging for sure, but I've steered clear of going into details on that front here, because obviously at Eurovision it will probably look completely different to how it did in this relatively small TV studio. Greeks have many reasons to be excited about this, and I'm really happy to be able to say I think those reasons are justified. If this won in May, I'd be delighted, and it would be great to finally see the contest back in Greece 21 years after it last was. There's a certain irony in the fact that Finland, who last won the contest in Athens, might well end up being their biggest rivals for that achievement. Though we will, of course, have to wait and see. For now, thank you as always for watching, and make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. You can also check out my socials in the description and consider supporting me on Patreon if you wish. As always, it's been a pleasure. take care, and I'll see you again very soon.